How's it going, everyone? Today I'm super excited to share with you my Frost Sorcerer build. And I don't see too many people talking about Frost Sorcerer builds. Everyone's out there using lightning builds or some kind of attempting to make a fire build, but this is the one that I think you will want to use when it comes to endgame. It's so much fun. The damage is insane in both solo and group play, both against individual mobs like bosses, as well as against groups of enemies. We do AoE and single target. And as a sorcerer, we're also extremely survivable. I've actually soloed the Butcher with this build. And we've teamed up with Mobalytics, so you can check out a written version of the build down below and pinned in the comments. It's a little bit different than the exact one that I'm using. I've tweaked it slightly to my liking, but they're largely the same and they have the same concept. If you want the build for yourself to just yoink it and run, well, you can actually see it here on the screen with each of the modifiers on my action bar. So feel free to just sort of use these skills and make your own version, but we will go through the whole skill tree, how everything works, and the gear that you want to look out for, because there's an absolute ton, and I mean a ton, of synergies in this build. The overall concept of the build is that we are using ice shards. This essentially allows us to machine gun fire ice shards out. As you can see, we run out of mana very quickly when you spam it back to back. But with this build, we utilize a whole bunch of passives and synergies all together so that we essentially have infinite mana while using this skill, and it arcs to other enemies, it ricochets, so it does AoE. We also have loads of ways to apply vulnerable as well as freeze, which makes our damage output go through the roof and is what allows us to have infinite mana after everything procs all together. So let's jump into it, show you the build, and then afterwards we're going to go through a live dungeon run so you can see it in action for yourself so that you know it is legit a good endgame build. You can see we're on world tier 3. This is the highest that I can do right now as I'm only level 54, but we'll do the dungeon solo and you'll see that we'll basically steamroll things. And as you can see, we've already killed the Butcher solo with this build, and we were taking on the crazy elite farm where it was like a group of 10 elites all together, and I was able to melt them all pretty quickly, which you may have seen in yesterday's video. So let's go through the skill tree and give you guys like the full rundown. I'll try and let you know which skills you basically want to prioritize as you're like leveling up. But this is more of an endgame build more so than a leveling build. So I would suggest you use this after your level maybe 40, 45, 50, because there's a lot of passives that are required to get the synergies you need. So to begin with, we are using Frostbolt as our basic skill. I absolutely love this one. So this one allows us to apply basically chilled and frozen, but the most biggest thing about this is this glinting Frostbolt upgrade that allows us to basically generate mana when we hit chilled or frozen enemies. So in the minuscule amount of downtime that you have between your basically unlimited mana, you can use this if you need to. Sometimes you need to cast this like once so that you can just basically do Ice Shard once and then it will just generate mana for you. There is some situations like that because you will be reliant on having barriers and hitting frozen or vulnerable enemies. So sometimes there's a bit of downtime between different elites and stuff like that, which you'll sort of see as we get in a dungeon, but the damage output's super impressive. So we only want minimal investment here because we aren't really using this very much. Of course, because this is all focused around doing damage with ice shards, you want to max this out, and you can see if you have extra levels from your item contribution, so I have 7 out of 5, then you're dealing even more damage. So of course, max out ice shards, it's our main damage dealer here. And of course, we will take enhanced, which gives them a 40% chance to ricochet off frozen enemies, and then we take greater, which while you have a barrier active, is treated as hitting enemies as if they were frozen, which essentially means while you have a barrier active, it will always ricochet. So this is part of how we can do single target and we can do AoE. Trust me, and this is just the beginning. It's about to get nuts with all of these different passives. And there's a lot of legendaries that boost this. The legendaries aren't needed, but they will basically just increase the damage you deal, which is what everyone wants to deal loads of damage if you're playing a sorcerer, right? So then we come down to the defensive skills. As you can see, what you basically want is ice armor and enhanced ice armor. So ice armor, you don't really need to level it up. The thing about leveling it is it just gives you more barrier. We're not really too worried about that. We're going to have lots of barriers. But what we are worried about is getting that mana regeneration, which just helps, you know, keep us topped up. So you just want 2 points in here. However, Frost Nova, I think a lot of people, and I mean a lot of people, are sleeping on Frost Nova. This is an incredible skill because it's an AoE, freeze, and vulnerable. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to level it up so that killing enemies reduces its cooldown, because it does have a big cooldown, and then of course get this one so that it makes enemies vulnerable like we just mentioned. But by leveling this up, you reduce the cooldown. My cooldown is 22.41 seconds, and it has 2 charges because of a legendary effect. So without the legendary, it has about a 16-second cooldown and 1 charge. I'll show you that legendary later, and it's a very good one for the build, so you can basically do this twice, so you always have uptime on Frost Nova, which is insane. So Frost Nova, very important. Leveling it, very important to reduce its cooldown so we have it more up to basically more often. The passives here are Glass Cannon. You deal more damage, you take more damage. A staple for most Sorcerer builds, just increases your damage. This might be one that you sort of invest in a little bit higher level because it's just a damage passive. You know, you want to get all your skills first as we go through. And Elemental Attunement here makes our critical strikes have a 15% chance to reset the cooldown of one of your defensive once every 10 seconds. So, of course, you want to get that crit strike chance on your gear. And remember, Ice Shards shoots like a machine gun, right? So you shoot 5 hits rapidly, and you're going to do it back to back to back to back. So even with a lower crit chance, you will still crit, and then that lucky hit has that chance to proc, which basically instantly either gives you your Ice Armor back or your Frost Nova cooldown back instantly. This is all about how we can keep the uptime on our infinite mana. It all synergizes. Lucky Hit is important here. I'll explain more about Lucky Hit later on as well, because there is some nuance to it. It's not as good as you might think, but with this build, because of the amount of rapid hits with the Ice Shards, it's perfect and works so good. So next, let's go down to our Conjuration skills, and here you can see we've actually picked up a few more passives, as well as another Frost skill, which is going to be Ice Blades. I absolutely love Ice Blades. This one's really cool. You basically summon a little Ice Blade that goes and chases down enemies. It applies vulnerable to them, and with the enhanced Ice Blades, more vulnerability, and then with the summoned, it also makes its passive effect, which basically means every time it hits, it chips down your cooldowns, and that then applies to your other skills. So this then juices up our defensives, so their cooldowns are constantly ticking down. Meanwhile, our lucky hit chance has a proc to instantly replenish them, so we want to basically keep Frost Nova and Ice Armor up for as long as possible. But we also have some passives here, as you can see. This one, Precision Magic, just gives us some more lucky hit chance, which is really nice. A very important thing to know about lucky hit chance, since a lot of that is interwoven into this build, is that our lucky hit chance is applied to the percentage chance of the effect. So you can see this is a 15% chance. That bonus 15% we have here doesn't mean we have a 30%. It means we have 15% of the 15% chance on top. So it helps, but it's not too big, but it does help, and we have so much lucky hit going on here, it's worth stacking it. We also have this passive here. This a line of the elements doesn't really matter too much. This is just so that we can get to protection, because protection will mean when we use a cooldown, like our Ice Armor, like our Frost Nova, like our Ice Blades, we instantly get a barrier for 2 seconds. So that just helps the uptime on our barrier and just makes us more survivable, because every time you're popping an ability, you basically get a third of your life as a barrier, which it all synergizes together. So now we come down to the masteries, and we don't want any of these skills, but what we do want, at least for your last skill points, I would recommend you invest in these sort of at the very end of maxing out everything. You can see there's a bunch of points down here which are more important, but putting 1 point into Icy Veil just to increase our barrier duration by a little bit, and then you can put some points in Snap Freeze, which will basically make all of your frost skills have a lucky chance to instantly freeze, and instantly freezing is important, which we'll get into very soon. So this is what I would recommend investing in last, but it sort of all helps. I haven't actually done all of my renown as well, so I still have more skill points, so there's more things you could max out both of these probably with if you've done all of your renown. But now we come down to the ultimate. Of course, we're taking Deep Freeze. I love this skill so much. This is probably one that you could swap out for teleport if you wanted a bit more maneuverability and just, speed of clearing things, but I love Deep Freeze so much. It's just so fun. And with the Prime Deep Freeze, it also is a way to give us a barrier. It's a panic button that will keep us alive when we press it. Deep Freeze is just really fun. It does big AoE. It freezes things as well, which we'll talk about soon as being very important. But perhaps the most important thing is this cluster of passives and also Avalanche down here. So Avalanche, again, another lucky hit. Our Frost skills have a 10% chance to make our next Ice Shards. Forget Frozen Orb, forget Blizzard, that's all about Ice Shards, to consume no mana and deal 40% increased damage. And that chance is doubled against vulnerable enemies. Now remember, our Frost Nova is making things vulnerable, and our Ice Blades are making things vulnerable. So most of the time we're hitting vulnerable things, especially when it's elites and bosses. So that is actually a 20% chance to cast it for free with almost 50% increased damage. And again, we've got that other passive up here to give us a little bit more lucky hit chance. might want to get lucky hit chance on your substats as well, and that all feeds into the infinite mana. But on top of that, we max out permafrost so that we deal more frost skill deals more damage to elites. Brilliant, because that affects our ice shards. Then we can max out icy touch so that we deal more cold damage to vulnerable enemies. Like we said, they're going to be vulnerable. And we can also max out hoarfrost to deal increased damage to chilled and frozen enemies. They're going to be vulnerable because Frost Nova makes them vulnerable and frozen. Icy Blades can proc a Frost Nova that makes them frozen. Icy Blades can also just hit things repeatedly to freeze them. But also, Frigid Breeze here, basically cold damage against vulnerable enemies has a 20% chance to generate 15 mana. So, if we pop a Frost Nova or our Ice Blades and something is vulnerable and then we hit them with Ice Shards, not only do we have a 20% chance to cost no mana and give us 40% more damage, we also have a 20% chance to generate mana back, 15 more mana back, so it costs 28, so we basically get half of the cost back for free, and we have increased lucky hit chance, so it all synergizes together really, really nicely. So we want to hit things, basically, we want to hit things that are frozen and vulnerable. So you can see that's where all of the skill points are. But there's also going to be legendary perks and stats that play into this. So let's go over to our actual build. Now my build is not perfect. I've just been leveling up. I've obviously got all legendaries by this point. At level like 50 plus, you will have all legendaries. I could have better stats. I could even have better legendary effects, but I've got enough here that it really shines. So we'll go through each piece. Some of them aren't relevant, some of them are. So this one, basically, you can see I have that lucky hit chance while my barrier is up as a substat. That's really, really good for us. Cooldown reduction, also really good for us so that we can get more ice armor and more frost novas. But you can see this just gives my ice armor unstoppable. Not needed, doesn't affect our damage. Just a nice thing to have. We're basically unstoppable CC immune while ice armor is up. For our chest piece, you can see I have flat damage and cold damage. That's the kind of things that you want. Fire resistance, total armor, bad substats, but this is the best chest piece I have right now. But this is a very good effect that you want. Our Frost Nova gains the additional charge, but increases its cooldown. Having two of these to cast at any time is so worth it. The cooldown difference isn't that impactful because Ice Blades reduces the cooldown. We also have a chance to instantly get the cooldown back based on our lucky hit chance, as we talked before in the skill menu. So I'm not really too worried about the cooldown. Having two of them is much, much more worth it. You can see on our gloves, we have critical strike chance. We want that crit strike chance, as we talked about before. And this one makes our ice armor do ice spikes on the ground. I can just do a little demo of you here. As you're moving, it just does ice damage. Again, this one's not really needed. It just sort of helps passive damage output, you know? Go over to our legs. This one is actually very nice to have. When you damage an elite, you get a barrier. As you know from all the skills we just went through, having barriers is important. So, and I'll show you again, there's another skill coming up which makes barriers important. That's really good when you're fighting elites. You're more tanky, you have a barrier, which feeds into some effects that we'll get into very soon. So that's a very good one to have, very easy one to get as a drops as well. I think it's a Codex of Power one as well. Here we have a very good effect. Our lucky hit chance is increased by 20% while we have a barrier. So we're starting to see why we need those barriers up, right? So while our barrier is up, we have a lot more lucky hit chance, so it refunds our mana. It gives us free casts with increased damage. It makes our critical hits have a chance to refresh our cooldowns on our defensives. So it all plays into things. Lucky hit chance is where it's at for this build. And then for my weapon here, we deal 40% increased damage to vulnerable enemies while I have a barrier up. So again, while we have that barrier up and the enemy is vulnerable, we hit them even harder. When they have vulnerable, they already take more damage. So a very nice one to have. You can see for our substats, we have almost 50% vulnerable damage to frozen enemies, damage to distant enemies, intelligence. These are all things that sort of feed in. So you do want to get different, substats that complement the build, which in the written version down below, it does have the recommended substats in it as well, which you can basically just follow easily. But that is a very good effect to have for this build specifically because we are making them vulnerable and we have barriers all the time. Even when we cast a skill, like if I cast my Ice Blades, you can see, remember, we get that barrier for 2 seconds. So just casting a skill gives us the barrier, which gives us the lucky hit chance, which gives us the more damage to vulnerable enemies. And of course, we have the ice armor, which gives us a barrier for even longer. So it's just all feeding in. Then we get to our amulet and rings, and you can see I deal 51% more damage to immobilized, stunned, or frozen enemies. So our Frost Nova makes them vulnerable, which makes us deal more damage while we have barriers, which gives us a barrier when we cast it, and then we deal 50% more damage when they're frozen. And remember, our Ice Blades can proc Frost Novas as well with our enchantment that we'll go over in a sec. Then we have here, our Ice Shards can pierce enemies but deal less damage per subsequent enemy. This basically means not only does it ricochet, but it also goes through enemies. So if they're all in a line, in a bunch, in a corridor, we basically do AoE with it, even more so than just the ricochet. So that's a really nice perk to have for the build as well. And I have the Mother's Embrace, which you get from the final boss in the game, which if our core skill hits 5 or more enemies, so now we're piercing enemies, we're ricocheting on enemies, it basically refunds the resource cost, so that helps. This isn't needed, by the way, but this one just helps. It's just nice to have, keeps you topped up, so I like to use this one. Also, it's a unique ring that you get from a story, so I've just been using it. It's the best thing I've got so far. But then if we go to our enchantments, as you can see, we have the Frost Nova enchantment. This one's really good. Our conjuration skills have a 30% chance to unleash a Frost Nova when hitting enemies. So our Ice Blades has that 30% chance to just instantly for free do a Frost Nova around it, which is brilliant. And of course we're enchanting our Ice Shards, which basically means they will automatically conjure and fly towards frozen enemies. This is really cool. So again, if our Ice Blades freezes or procs a Frost Nova that freezes things, if we pop a Frost Nova or if we freeze things while shooting them, it instantly shoots an Ice Shard from us to them for free in any direction around us. It's incredible. So we've talked a lot of information here. We've showed a lot of legendaries. We've gone through the skill tree, but you might be wondering, but does it really work that well? So let's actually go into a dungeon ourselves and test it out. And I'm very excited to show you because I've been having such a blast with this build. I want to test out other builds as well, but I've been having so much fun, and this one's such an easy mode build that I don't know if I can come off it, to be honest. I don't know if you guys have got to that point where you've made a build and you're like, I don't think I can do anything else. This is just so good and powerful. I've not actually even done this dungeon before, so this is a first time in here. We'll get the aspect when we complete it. I usually just ignore trash mobs, but I'll demo here the Frost Nova for you. Check this out. So I did one cast of Frost Nova, and with the enchantment of Ice Shards, they were frozen, so it shot Ice Shards at them for free and basically insta-killed them. If we just cast the normal Ice Shards, you can see the damage is really good. Remember, we're on World Tier 3, as you can see under the minimap. So this is the hardest stuff I can fight right now, and I'm just melting them. Took 2 casts to kill him, right? But he wasn't frozen or vulnerable, and I didn't have any barrier up. So you have to remember, when we get to an elite, they're going to die even quicker than these trash mobs because we'll actually use our cooldowns on them. And the whole time, we have Deep Freeze as a panic button. You know, if things get out of hand or if there's a lot of enemies around. So, like, check this out. Just one cast of Frost Nova and everything's dead. I literally didn't have to do anything else. So let's keep going through. And we got 2 charges, which I love. If I do a barrier look, it's a little bit better. We do want to making them vulnerable increases our damage by so much. So I can't wait till we actually can get to an elite or a boss, because these trash mobs are just too easy for our build. I usually ignore trash mobs. So let's actually ignore these trash mobs as we go through now. Oh, these ones look pretty big though. And they're dead. I'll chug potions as we go because we're just kind of ignoring them. We're really looking for the elites. There we go. Okay, just instantly just gone. Let's just kill these guys because they're following us. But okay, here we go, an elite. And it's dead. It's just literally instant. Oh, I need to get its energy for the actual mission objective. I've not seen a sorcerer build that is as easy to play as this, as fun. It's thematic. It's like you have different cooldowns, you're doing different things. Here's another elite, and it's dead. I'm just impressed by how easy things die with this build. The thing is, it's fun to play. You're not just holding down one button. You actually are casting, you're machine gunning, you're ricocheting. You have barriers, you have like cooldowns to use. You could even summon your ice blades. You see that we got an elite there, it's dead. It's just insane, and you can see our cooldowns are just so low, and they're always coming back up that like nothing is a problem. I think we've killed all the elites down here, so we'll have to go and head in a different direction now. We haven't even used our deep freeze because we've not really been in that much trouble. Obviously, these trash mobs are hurting me because I'm just ignoring them. But here's another elite down here. We freeze it. We kill it in like literally one cast. It's a little bit nuts, isn't it? So remember, we freeze enemies, we vulnerable them, we have barriers up, so then we have a lucky hit chance. We ricochet through them. The lucky hit makes crits refund our defensives. It also has lucky hit to refund the mana or to make it cast for free and increase the damage. So there's an absolute ton of synergy in this build. And although I have a lot of legendary effects active, right? I don't have a lot of the substats that I exactly want. Like, very few of my gear pieces, like most of my gear pieces have 1 or 2 of the substats that sort of work. Not really any god rolls or perfect gear pieces that I have right now. So this is achievable with... I was using this while like leveling, to be honest, so it's achievable at any point, even without the legendaries. But the legendaries are what allow you to just nuke things at insane, like proper insane speeds. It looks like I didn't pick up the animus over here, so we'll go pick that up, and then we'll go to the next phase. And hopefully I can show you killing the boss in here as well, because it just defeats things so fast. It's just so fun. And there are some other uniques and legendaries that you kind of want to look out for, right? Oh, I'll pick that up because it's a sacred. There's actually a unique, which is in the written version. It's the recommended item in the written version, which will be linked below. The thing is, there's a... I'm not going to say. It basically pops... When frozen enemies die, it has lucky hit chance to pop another Frost Nova. So if you had that unique, when you pop it and it kills them, it then has a chance for them to chain react in another Frost Nova. Here's like, there was 2 elites just right next to each other and they're just instantly dead. Here's some more. There you go, dead. And then when there's like loads of enemies, for fun, we can just do a deep freeze, which will freeze things. And then we can just nuke everything. So you can see, like, even when you're completely surrounded, you're totally fine because you have so much AoE, like, capacity that nothing's a problem. This is the ultimate sorcerer build, like, in my opinion, at least right now, when I'm not using any uniques. You know, I'm using sort of a few synergetic legendaries, but I did leveling with this without those legendaries, and it was still working. Obviously, you need more skill points so you can get all of those passives rolling that basically refund and that you cast infinitely. But you can see while you're hitting those frozen and vulnerable enemies, you can literally see that I don't run out of mana. It's just nuts. Like, we're playing a sorcerer that has incredibly high burst damage, that has AoE, like, CC and vulnerability, which helps in party play. And we never stop damaging because we have all of this lucky hit and different perks. That mean we just don't stop. Oh, there's an event here. Should we do the event? Let's do the event, guys. Let's see what we get. Maybe we'll get lucky and get some good drops. And I'm going to be honest, I mostly play in a party, as you guys know. But you can see from this dungeon, and I also killed the Butcher solo, that this literally works perfectly in solo play. I hate these events where the mobs like trickle spawn in. Like I kind of want them all to spawn together because I could nuke them all down instantly, like all together. The great thing about Deep Freeze is it has a massive AoE range, and then when it freezes enemies, we're then going to shoot those ice spikes for free. There's just trash mobs everywhere. Oh, there's an elite there. We'll wait for our cooldowns and we'll get that elite. You can see that was that. Ooh, legendary. Our Ice Blades popped that Frost Nova for free. That's what happened there. As soon as we pop the Frost Nova, elite's just instant death. Oh, there's another Frost Nova and instant death. So you can see when the Ice Blades gets that lucky hit chance to pop a Frost Nova, it's instant. There we go. We did actually fail the mastery task just because just having a bit of fun and talking through the build with you guys. But you know, if you put a little bit more focus in, you can do these tasks without really too much of a problem. Oh, we just leveled up to 55 as well. Well, we got a few sacreds and we got a legendary, so I would say that event ended up being kind of worth it. I'm really excited to get to the final boss though, so that we can show you guys sort of the burst potential. As long as they're frozen and vulnerable, it's kind of sky is the limit sort of thing, you know? Here we go, here's another locked chest. Elite just died instantly. Oh, dungeon complete, was that it? I guess this one didn't have an actual, like... Let's just freeze this guy. Oh, I've been stunned, okay. Also, our deep freeze breaks stuns, so it's quite nice if you do get sort of caught like that in a stun. So this dungeon didn't actually have a final boss, unfortunately, but I think you guys got the idea, right? You stack all these things together with all of the crazy synergies with barrier, freeze, and vulnerable with the lucky hit chance. We have pretty much infinite mana. We have constant AoE, freeze, vulnerables. We have barriers on when we activate a skill that's Ice Blades, we get the barrier. We also have the barrier with Ice Armor. We use Frost Nova, we get another barrier. So our barriers are up, synergizing with our legendary effects. You can see here it's glowing because we can cast it for free, because of the lucky hit chance that we talked about before. But that's like the overall way that the build plays and how you use it and all the skills that you want. So if we've hooked you up here, guys, make sure to hit that like button down below. We have more builds coming your way soon, so if you want more, tell us what classes you want to see builds on, and let me know what you think of this. Tell me in the comments if you tried this build out. I would love to know what you guys think, because I don't think I can change off of this one. So thank you for watching, guys, and the 2 videos on screen now, we think you'll really enjoy if you did enjoy this video. You don't have to watch them if you don't want to, but if you did like this one, you're probably going to like these ones too. And then tell us what you think after watching in the comments down below.